My sister always believed she was the smartest person in the room. Not because she worked harder. Not because she understood systems better. But because she spoke first, spoke louder, and spoke with the kind of confidence that made people stop questioning details. I learned that early. In meetings, she'd summarize before anyone else could correct her. In family discussions, she'd decide what was practical and what was emotional. In business, she liked shortcuts, especially when she believed no one was watching closely. For years, I stayed in the background by choice. Not out of fear, out of patience. We built a small company together, nothing flashy at first. Contracts, consulting, quiet backhand work that grew slowly but steadily. I handled structure, compliance, legal wording, risk mitigation, the parts no one applauded but everything depended on. She handled the face, presentations, pitches, handshakes. She liked saying, we, when things went well, and you, when things slowed down. I didn't argue. I documented every agreement, every clause, every exception. She brushed past because, we'll deal with it later. Later always comes. The shift happened when an opportunity landed that was bigger than anything we'd touched before. A merger proposal, not a full acquisition, a strategic deal that would put our company under a larger umbrella while keeping operational control intact. The kind of deal that could either stabilize everything or quietly destroy it depending on the fine print. I told her we needed time. She told me we needed momentum. They're waiting, she said, tapping the folder impatiently. If we hesitate, they'll move on. They're not going anywhere, I replied. But if we sign wrong, we will. She smiled, the kind of smile that looks reassuring to outsiders but dismissive up close. You worry too much, she said. This is why people prefer dealing with me. I should have pushed harder. Instead, I did what I always did. I updated the documents. There was one clause I insisted on including, buried, unglamorous, but precise. It defined authority boundaries. Who could sign, under what conditions, and what would happen if those conditions were violated. She skimmed it, literally skimmed it. Looks standard, she said. I'll handle it. That was the moment. The moment she stopped asking and started assuming. A week later, I was looped into an email I shouldn't have been excluded from in the first place. Signed, stamped, finalized. My sister had signed the deal without me. Without legal review. Without final compliance clearance. Without the condition precedent that made the agreement safe. I stared at the attachment calmly. Because I knew something she didn't. The clause wasn't just protective. It was conditional, and by bypassing me, she had activated it. I didn't call her. I didn't panic. I forwarded the document to one person. Then I waited. The reply didn't come immediately. That was expected. People don't rush when they think they're safe. They rush when they realize they might not be. For 2 days, nothing changed on the surface. Emails continued. Meetings stayed on the calendar. My sister walked around with the same confidence, already talking about next phase integration, like the future was guaranteed. She didn't notice the quiet shift. But I did. On the third morning, an email landed in my inbox with a subject line that made everything else feel irrelevant. Request for clarification, authority and compliance. No accusations. No panic. Just a request. I read it slowly. They wanted confirmation of who had signing authority under the operating agreement. They wanted to know whether all internal conditions had been satisfied prior to execution. They wanted documentation. This was the moment where people usually start scrambling. I didn't. I replied with 3 attachments in 1 sentence. Please review clause 14.3 in the executed draft. That was it. An hour later, my sister called me. She sounded irritated, not worried. Yet, why are they asking about authority? She said. I already signed. It's done. It's executed, I corrected calmly. Not validated. She scoffed. You're splitting hairs. No, I said. I'm reading what we agreed to. Silence. Then she laughed it off. You're being dramatic. They're just covering themselves. I didn't argue. Because that clause didn't require drama. It required time. By the end of the week, the tone of communication changed. Meetings were postponed. Language softened. Words like final were replaced with pending review. Legal teams entered conversations where sales teams had been leading before. My sister noticed then. She came into my office late one evening, closing the door behind her. What did you do? She asked. I followed procedure, I replied. She dropped her bag onto a chair. They're questioning the deal. That's not normal. It is, I said. When something doesn't line up. Her eyes narrowed. Are you doing this on purpose? I looked up at her. I warned you not to sign without clearance. You're punishing me, she snapped. No, I said evenly. I stopped protecting you. That was the first time I saw fear cross her face, not panic, just calculation failing. Over the next few days, the requests escalated. Not loudly, formally. A compliance review was initiated. Then a risk assessment. Then a temporary operational pause, out of caution. That phrase mattered. Out of caution meant they had identified exposure. The exposure was simple. By signing without proper authority, my sister had violated the internal condition precedent. That triggered automatic consequences outlined in the same clause she had skimmed past. One of those consequences involved liability. Another involved control. And the last one, the one she never bothered to read, involved termination without penalty if misrepresentation was confirmed. She called me again, voice sharper now. "They're asking for your confirmation," she said. "You need to tell them this was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't," I replied. "You're going to sink the company," she hissed. I stood up slowly. "No," I said. "The company is protected. That's the difference between us." She stared at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. "You planned this," she said quietly. I shook my head. I prepared for it. That distinction mattered more than she realized. The review concluded faster than expected. Because facts don't need interpretation. They only need comparison. Her signature. The authority clause. The missing approvals. By the time the formal notice arrived, there was nothing left to debate. The partner exercised their right to withdraw. Not only that, they initiated a secondary action to recover costs incurred during due diligence, citing misrepresentation of internal authority. That email didn't go to me. It went to her. She read it twice before calling. Her voice was no longer sharp. It was thin. "They're pulling out," she said. "And they're blaming me." I didn't respond. "They're saying the deal is void," she continued. "That the company breached its own governance." She swallowed hard. "What do we do?" I answered honestly. "We do what the contract says." That night, she stayed late at the office. Lights on. Door closed. By morning, everyone knew something was wrong. Not details. Just that something had broken. And it wasn't finished breaking yet. The formal notice arrived on a Monday morning. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just precise. Subject lines don't lie, and this one didn't try to soften anything. Termination of agreement, governance breach confirmed. I read it once. Then again. Slowly. The partner had exercised their right to withdraw under clause 14.3. Exactly as written. Exactly as triggered. They cited misrepresentation of signing authority, failure to meet internal approval requirements, and exposure created by unilateral execution. In plain terms, the deal was void. The company was now liable. And responsibility rested with the person who signed. My sister. She didn't come into the office that day. Instead, HR sent out a quiet notice canceling all integration meetings. Finance froze outgoing payments related to the deal. Legal locked document access pending internal review. People didn't ask questions out loud. But they looked. They always do when confidence collapses overnight. She called me in the afternoon. Her voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. "They want an explanation," she said. "They're saying this could turn into personal liability." I closed my laptop. "That depends," I replied, "on how honest you are." She laughed weakly. "You're enjoying this." I wasn't. What I felt wasn't satisfaction. It was clarity. "You signed without authority," I said calmly. "You bypassed internal safeguards. You represented control you didn't have." I thought. "That's the problem," I interrupted. "You didn't read. You assumed." Silence. Then her voice cracked. "If they push this, I could lose everything." I didn't rush to answer. Because this wasn't revenge. It was consequence. Over the next week, the internal investigation moved quickly. Not because anyone was eager to punish her, but because everything was documented. Email chains. Version histories. Approval logs. There was no ambiguity. She had acted alone. When the board meeting finally happened, I wasn't defensive. I wasn't emotional. I answered questions directly, provided documentation when asked, and corrected facts without commentary. She tried once to explain it as urgency. That argument collapsed immediately. Urgency doesn't erase governance. By the end of the meeting, the decision was unanimous. She was removed from operational control. Her role was terminated with cause. And because of the clause she had ignored, the company exercised its right to separate liability. The legal exposure stayed with her. Not the business. Not me. When she came to collect her things, the office felt different. Quieter. People avoided eye contact, not out of loyalty to me, but because watching someone fall from certainty makes others uncomfortable. She stopped at my desk before leaving. "You could have stopped this," she said. I looked up at her. "I tried," I replied. "You just didn't listen." She nodded once, slowly. I thought you were just being careful, she said. I was, I answered. For everyone. She left without another word. The company survived. Smaller, leaner, more cautious, but intact. Weeks later, a new deal came across my desk. Different partner, slower pace, full review, no shortcuts. This time, nothing was rushed. Nothing was assumed, and no one signed without authority. People started asking me questions they had never asked before. Not because I demanded it, but because proof has a way of reshaping trust. My sister had believed control came from confidence. I knew better. Control comes from understanding the fine print. She signed the deal without me. And one clause cost her the company.